Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending January 7th. We've got a big show tonight. We've got our guy behind the counter, William Bernanke from CG Analytics. He's going to join us to talk about where the money's going in those 4 wild card games and, of course, the national championship game. We've got another segment of Handicapper's Corner. Ralph and I will break down some NFL angles for the playoffs. And then Ralph, Dave, Cokin, and myself, we will be breaking down all 5 football games this weekend, the 4 playoff games, and the national championship. Mark Seidel's behind the controls. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. So let's get this party started and bring in our first guest. And William, how did the holidays treat you, my man? Some crazy games over the holidays. Saw a run of dogs over the last couple days of the bowl games, but a lot of things to talk about, and let's get it started with, I'm going to ask you, Alabama and Oklahoma, Saturday night. I'm on the Strip at one of the sports books. I was in the poker room at the Venetian, so right next door to the sports book, and we can hear all of the action going on over there. When Alabama took a knee, all I heard was moans, groans, yells, and, some people happy, some people not. How did that kneel down affect the house net finally for that game?
Well, first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. Start off with that before I forget. And as far as the game, we needed Oklahoma. I think it was pretty apparent. Line went from 14 to 15, so we got a whole load of Alabama money in the day of game. Mostly point spread. The money line bets were kind of tied into parlays, so it wasn't too big a deal because those parlays got annihilated, as you could probably tell the day after. But that knee was a 6-figure swing on the side and the total, because the total closed at 80.5, and it stayed under that, so that was a huge play for us. It couldn't have worked out any better in terms of point spread. And then the second half bets, we took a lot of Alabama second half bets because of how good they looked in the first half, and that wiped it out. How
did the bowls fare for you guys overall once we got the Saturday championship games, and then of course the 2 big days of the bowl games, New Year's Eve day and then New Year's Day?
Well, it was slow starting off, as you could see favorites were winning, but the handles weren't that big, so it wasn't really damaging for us in any way. But the games we really needed are the games we got, and those winners were Clemson, winning and covering against Notre Dame, which is a rare occurrence for a double-digit favorite for us to need, but that was a huge need. Oklahoma, of course, Virginia Tech coming in, Oklahoma State, Iowa, and then the ultimate backdoor. I even tweeted it out as I was watching Washington pulling the backdoor against Ohio State, which was sort of a miracle cover. And then Texas winning outright was just gravy. You kind of knew Texas was going to win after Washington covered. It was like the momentum was there for that to happen, if that makes any sense. And some of the games we didn't do so well on were Florida winning outright over Michigan, Virginia winning their game, Northwestern covering as a dog, believe it or not, wasn't a very good result, and then Michigan State and Penn State. Not Penn State, Kentucky winning outright wasn't the greatest result, but the winners certainly outweighed the losers, especially the last day.
Win or loss, was there one bowl game those last couple of days that stood out as far as volume goes, that was head and shoulders above the rest, or each of those individual games did their own fair share?
Oh, I mean, the Texas game, the Texas-Georgia was right there with any of them, and then the Rose Bowl was second. The playoff games were huge handles too, but not as big as the 2 New Year's Day games at the end there, the Rose Bowl at 2:00 and then the 5:45 Sugar Bowl kickoff, because those games were isolated. I think Saturday had a lot of stuff going on, so people were spreading their money around there. So those 2 by far.
Moving to the big game on Monday night, what have you seen so far as the money? Where's the money coming as far as volume? And then, obviously, where's the sharps, the guys that you consider sharp? Where are they at?
Yeah. Well, right now, the line has come down a tad, which, it is an adjustment at this point. It was early, some early money, but nothing significant. But as far as where we're seeing overall, 62% of the money coming in on Bama laying the points. So majority of bettors are laying the points with Bama, and the money line's even more lopsided right now. A ton of money line bets on Bama. 88% is laying the juice there, and it looks like it's all public money. So right now, just going off what the trend is early, it looks like we'll need Clemson to cover and possibly win outright. And the total, it's 75% of the cash is on the over right now.
Moving to the NFL, there's the 4 games. Let's run through the 4 games. First game I want to talk about is Indy at Houston. Now, teams obviously meeting for the 3rd time, so we have a lot of history with the first 2 meetings. Tell us what the 3rd meeting is showing across the board.
Not surprised here. We're running fairly even when it comes to the point spread, but bettors are taking a shot with the dog here. 70% of the cash on the Colts taking the plus money. And the other 3 games, that's what you want me to get to, right? The other 3, we're in Seattle. Nobody believes in Dallas here. 2 times more money is coming in on Seattle. So bettors are just not believing in Dallas, and I think they love what they've seen in Seattle, especially late in the year. And then this is kind of surprising to me, but 67% of the money is coming in on the Ravens side of money line. Money line a little closer to 70%. So I don't know if that trend will stay true. I'm sure we'll see some Charger money show up this weekend, especially being in close proximity to L.A. And then the other game is pretty lopsided. The Bears, 68% of the cash laying the points with the Bears, but the money line is coming in on the Eagles. 80% of the cash on the Eagles money line. So this could be one of those rare cases where we need the dog to cover, but the favorite to win. So a game landing on 3, Bears winning by 3, 2, whatever, that would look like that might be ideal for us.
At this time of the year, Will, I know books get a little bit nervous with the teasers. The teasers, for sharp advantage players, present a lot of value. And we've got 3 of the 4 games where the numbers are perfect teaser numbers, where you can use a 6-point teaser and get that dog over the 3, the 4, the 6, and the 7. And a couple of those games have low totals, which makes it even more when you're just on – it's teaser 101. I mean, the advantage players, they're going to take those teasers blindly.
Yes, especially in games that you have some key numbers. Now, the key numbers being 3. I personally think 4 is a key number as well, and 8. But a lot of, this day and age with the missed extra points and 2-point plays, 2-point conversions. So those are numbers I've seen people attack more so than in the past. And you'll see that in certainly with the Charger game, if people like the Chargers here, because that line is a little higher, 2.5, so you'll get to that number a lot easier. Where Seattle and Dallas looks like it's trending down. I think Houston right now is 1. I mean, it's 2 with us, but I think it gets to 1, and that kind of takes away some of the teaser play there. And Dallas, I think, also could be trending down as well here. I see some 1.5, so that might be not quite as appetizing for teaser players, but certainly the Chargers, we've taken some already with the Chargers.
Will, of the 4 playoff games just bunched together, have any stood out where you've taken a significant amount of money as far as the total's concerned, either from the public or from the sharps?
As far as the over-unders, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, we took a reasonable size bet on over in the Seattle-Dallas game. That's it as far as totals. Other than that, it's been all kind of slow footing, slow action here.
I understand, Will, you guys have some special stuff going on this weekend with these playoff games. We all know how popular prop bets are Super Bowl week. You guys are bringing out some props this week for the playoff games, and I understand that you've got some cross-promotion props where cross sports. Tell our listeners about it. Yeah,
we're doing some stuff, some fun stuff this weekend to incorporate props for your favorite players and certainly teams in the NFL, the wild card round, and crossover to like the NBA with James Harden, or crossover to Sacramento Golden State when they play over those points to someone's yards. I don't know who's exactly. I don't want to give out exactly who we're dealing with right now. And then also the Vegas Knights, shots on goal to pass attempts to a player, things of that nature. Alex Tuck's points to someone's touchdowns. So you'll see a lot of that. I don't think you'll see it. You will not see it anywhere else in town. So that'll be something unique that we're offering here, and we're excited about it. And to do it each week, for each playoff round, as it comes up, divisional round, and then conference championship, and then of course the Super Bowl. And I wanted to also add that for the national championship game, we have 20-cent money line split for those people who may not be aware of what that means is if any money, whatever the money line is, let's say it's right now it's 210 and 190, 190 being the plus. If it goes to 230, you'll be able to get 210. So that's what we'll be offering, and it's you can't beat that anywhere in town.
Good stuff. And all those props, those are available on the app?
Absolutely. They'll be up and running, plenty of time before the game, on Friday afternoon, Friday evening.
That's the way to do it.
And for some people, when Will talks about that 20-cent split, you look across the board at other casinos. I mean, the best you find is 30. There's some 40 cents, and there are some even higher ones. So if you want to bet the money line on this, it really is like getting 20 free cents on your bet, an extra 20% value by doing that.
Good stuff. And the other thing, before I let you go, Will, I want to thank you for this year. We had so much response to it. People loved it every Sunday morning, you and Kelly doing the 2-minute warning, giving everybody that last look at the Sunday NFL card. Now with the regular season being done, we're going to suspend that. Hopefully you'll be able to do that with us next year. Again, that was a great thing. We loved it. The listeners, the viewers, they would tune in on Sunday morning to do it. And it's just information that 10 years ago nobody had access to, never really got to peek behind the curtains. And we appreciate you, Jason, and everybody at CG that shares the information with us.
Yeah, definitely. And it's my pleasure. And, I want to just keep, us here, we want to keep evolving just like the gaming industry is. And that's all part of it. Information shouldn't be, kept away from people like it's, a diamond or something. We, should share stuff with everybody so bettors have as much an edge as the sports book does. There's no reason why this shouldn't be the case.
All right, Will, good stuff as always. We'll talk to you hopefully next week. Your schedule will permit. We'll be talking about the second round of the playoffs and see which wild card teams moved on. Looking forward to next week.
Oh, likewise. Can't wait. Guys, have a good weekend.
You too. All
Thanks,
right, guys. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's Handicapper's Corner up next here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're going to take a look at NFL Handicapper's Corner. Ralph always gives us good stuff in this segment, and we are going to look again at some NFL angles. I've got one for you. I can't take credit for this one, and I want to give a shout-out to my guy, Gil Alexander. You can check him out at Beating the Book on Twitter. He has a daily show on VSiN, and I'm fortunate enough, I've been doing it 6 or 7 years now. We do a weekly NFL podcast. You can check that out, the NFL Megapod, and he had this stat for the wild card round. Now, I want to tell you guys, we always talk about, everything is against the spread. You want to, you don't care who wins. You want to have the against the spread winner. In the NFL, the average, if you just pick the winner, that team covers the spread 83% of the time. However, when you get to the wild card round, and it's the wild card round only, you pick the winner, you pick the point spread winner as well, and that is 89.9% of the time. That's just a mind-boggling number. We say that sounds easy, pick the winner, but we've got a lot of games this week that obviously are going to show that. You got 3 games where the spread is 1 or 1.5, 2 max. So yeah, they're going to win. Whoever wins the game is going to cover the spread. There's really only one where you might have a team win and not cover. But that is the Bears game. Ralph, what have you dug up on the playoffs for us?
Well, just to carry that theme over to show how strong that number is, I just wanted to run numbers since 2013. And hopefully you guys listened to the bowl angle show that we did, because those things were incredible this year, talking about those 6-6 teams. You don't have those same situations in the NFL. It's such a league of parity. And in the playoffs since 2013, home teams are 35-15 straight up, and they're 24-23-3 against the spread. So, while home teams have won 35 of 50 games, or 70%. It's one game over 50% against the spread. So it's a situation where you can't say, oh, I like home teams, or I like favorites, or I like dogs, because there are so many close things. An example of home favorites in the NFL playoffs since 2013. Home favorites of 7 or more are 15-3 straight up. And, we're going to talk about how close these playoffs are, and there may not be many instances where you have home favorites of 7 or more. But of those 18 games, while they went 15-3 straight up, they're 7-11 against the spread. So, again, it's a situation that favors the away dog. I did find 4 unique situations, and, each is relevant to a game this week. But, again, we talk about not betting a system or an angle, or basing a play just on that system or an angle. So while we give you these angles or systems that apply, it doesn't necessarily mean we like the team. It's just something for you to add to your bank of knowledge. Think about the situations as they apply. Do they make sense to you? Do they make more sense to some teams than the other? And the first we're going to talk about are just away teams that played their final regular season game at home. So, obviously, it applies to this week because you played your regular season game at home, and that would be Seattle this week. Well, in that role, when the lines are between the 6s, so you have an equally matched team, you're 33-18-2 against the spread, 65%. That's since 2012, a powerful number. When that away team and the line is between the 3s, again, like Seattle is this week, 10-3 against the spread, 77%. So, basically, you're looking at a team that finished at home, didn't have to travel back-to-back weeks, was in the playoffs, and now traveling. You don't have to worry about fading that team. If you like that road team in the playoffs, they've been a strong play. And here's another Seattle angle. This hasn't happened much. But a wild card dog, if they were a favorite by 12 or more their last game. So if you were a favorite by 12 or more, you were probably at home anyway. Very few away favorites are going to be laying over 12 in the regular season finale unless they were playing a situation. Wild card dogs in that role, 7-1 against the spread. So it just means you basically were the superior opponent last week, and now you're a dog this week. Again, a good number. So both of those apply to Seattle in that role. 2 other situations I just want to bring up. Wild card road teams, if they finish the regular season on the road, so the exact opposite situation of Seattle. We talked about Seattle being home and now going on the road. Well, this wild card team had to play their regular season finale on the road, and now they're starting on the road. That this week, Marco, applies to the Indianapolis Colts. Plus, they had to play Sunday night in a must-win game on the road. Those teams, 19-43 straight up, 22-37 and 3 against the spread, and that goes back all the way to 1980. So a long-time angle, again, not a huge 90% number, but, again, a situation for you to think about that has been a negative. And lastly, one that surprised me, and this is another road playoff team. A road playoff team that shut out their foe in the final regular season week. Hasn't happened very often. That's Philadelphia this week off the 24-0 win, I believe, over Washington. Those teams that are off a shutout win and are now on the road in the playoffs, 2-9, both straight up and ATS. So, again, the playoffs aren't like the bowls where we have a lot of situations, plus we're only talking 4 games. And when it gets to the playoffs, there are no magical numbers that we can bring up to you, but it just shows you some of the situations that have been a positive or a negative. One thing I will bring up is if you do have a home dog in the playoffs, Those home dogs since 2013, the total has gone 1-7. We don't have any this week. We'll have to see if we have any next week. But since 2013, again, home dogs in the playoffs, 1-7 over/under in the last 5 years. So, just a couple tidbits to think about to add to why you like a team or why you want to fade a team. Marco, anything you look at differently in the playoffs when you're handicapping them compared to regular season numbers?
Well, you know what? I think that there's a slight advantage to teams that had to fight their way into the playoffs because they've already played a playoff game, in my opinion. If you had to win your way in.
We talked about the Colts, right? And Philadelphia both are in that role.
So that gives you a little bit of the momentum we've seen in the past. Now, last week, Ralph, we talked about it on a couple of the videos that we did. I couldn't understand some of the teams that were in a situation that didn't have anything to play for, continued to play starters late into the games, and some of them all the way to the end. You know, Dallas had Dak on the field in an absolute meaningless game for the Cowboys. The Chargers, when the day started, had a reason to play. They were, trying to catch Kansas City.
So they had their game plan set.
Yeah.
It's tough to...
But at halftime, Kansas City was blowing out the Raiders, which gave them no shot. Why did they still have Phillip Rivers in that game in the fourth quarter? If he would have taken a hit and got hurt, the Chargers season's over. It made no sense. And I think part of this happened from last year where the Rams had everything wrapped up. They took the week off, didn't play anybody. You lose that momentum. And it's not, people think teams are light switches. They're not. I think you need that continuity, and I think that's why some of these teams played the people the way they did down the stretch, not to have that, rusty game or whatever you want to call it.
The Rams had a bye last week too, right? So they really had 2 weeks off. I believe they had.
They wouldn't have had a bye that late in the season last year.
No, I'm talking in the playoffs.
Oh, in the playoffs, yes. They had to bye beyond.
So they actually took off the final week, and then they had to bye week. So they had 2 weeks off, which is a lot different than having 1 week off.
Absolutely. But in the Chargers' case and in Dallas's case, they both, in the position that they were, knew they were going to be playing this week. Why have them out there?
And the Chargers knew they were playing on the road.
Yeah. So that's a little bit things I like to look at. Defense. We get to remember now, we're in January. Make yourself look at the weather, okay? If a game's not in the dome and it's on the East Coast, you want to look at the weather. Some of these passing teams, you get into the cold weather. If there's winds, if you got snow, if you got sleet, anything like that come into the games, changes things. What we say about defense. Defense is travel. Doesn't matter if they're playing on the road or home. Defenses are generally good. If you got a solid defense, that's going to keep you in a game. If you got a solid running game, elements become mute. The wind can be blowing. It can be snowing. If you can run the football, you can run the football. So make yourself aware of all of those situations.
Jumping in with the one thing you had said with the weather, I can tell you this from a lot of quotes and a lot of teams and a lot of quarterbacks. Wind really doesn't. Rain doesn't bother quarterbacks. Snow doesn't bother quarterbacks. It's the wind. When you have winds over 20 miles an hour, that's when you have to start putting that into your handicapping. Yes, you may fumble a ball because the ball's wet, but as a whole, those things can affect both teams. But the wind is what you want to look at, especially when you start looking at these NFL games later in the year where you have those East Coast or Northern teams playing at home. Yeah,
and Ralph, another thing I used to look at, if somebody sees snow in the forecast, you see it every single time. The total's gonna crash 2 or 3 points immediately. As soon as the weather report comes out that there's going to be snow, and it depends what kind of snow you got. If you got just a slick field, okay, you're not 6 inches deep in snow. It's frozen. It's slick. That actually becomes an advantage to the receiver because the receiver knows the route he's running, okay? He's prepared himself mentally and physically, his body, when he's going to make the cut. So there's less chance that he's going to slip when he makes his cut. However, a defender covering that guy, it's all reaction. And you know yourself, when you got a jerk and you're not ready to go left or right, but you have to do it, that's when your feet can go out from under you. And I see the weather reports a lot of time, and if I got good passing teams, I don't let it bother me. I think it's an advantage to the offenses that you're going to get broken. You're more likely to get a broken play for a defender slipping than a receiver slipping, and you get a touchdown.
Again, agreed. The weather can help you or hurt you depending on how what that weather is doing.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap up Handicapper's Corner. We'll be back. When we get back, we got the national championship game to break down. Dave, Ralph, and myself, we're going to tear into Alabama-Clemson, the rematch. Seems like every year,
the
man.
The Quattro match? I don't know what it is.
Is this part 5?
Yeah. Part
4 or 5? Yeah. All right. We'll be back in a moment here on the Wager Talk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the Wager Talk Podcast. Before we head into the national championship game, I want to tell you this segment is brought to you by uwager.eu. We got a special offer for you. You can get a 50% sign-up bonus when you use coupon code WT50. That's WT50. Get a 50% sign-up bonus. This is an offer exclusive to Wager Talk listeners. All right, guys, this is the big one.
Here we go.
This is the one we pretty much knew was going to be here for quite some time, and it's not the first time we've seen these two hook up. And, Dave, at least we can be safe and say we won't have a repeat matchup like this kind of one in the NBA this year.
You don't think the Cavaliers are going to make it back to the finals, huh?
No, I think they're going to just miss.
That's what I like about you, Marco. You are willing to really step out on a limb. So this is going to be fun because – first of all, it is developed into the best rivalry in college football. That's weird because they're not in the same conference. They don't play every year, or they're not scheduled to play every year. But it's 4 straight years now that Clemson and Alabama have met in a playoff setting. And you get these two great coaches. I think
you make them 1 and 2.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no question. That's the thing everybody's arguing about. Well, boy, should Notre Dame have been in, or Georgia, or what? Who cares? Because 1 and 2 got there, and that's the intent of this, is to get the two best teams into the finals. Well, we got them, and there's no argument to that. I mean, Clemson and Alabama are the two best teams in the country, and by a pretty good margin. You've got the guy at quarterback for Clemson, who, if he were eligible for this year's draft, you would see the Cardinals getting flooded with one offer after another, and if they were smart, saying GTFOH, because we're not trading this pick, and we're taking Lawrence, okay, because he is, I mean...
So are you saying there may be some tanking in the NFL this upcoming year?
No, because he's not eligible for another 2 more years.
Right, he's got to be a redshirt sophomore or a junior.
Yeah, boy, I mean, talk about you better get an insurance policy, Lawrence family, because this kid is that good. And then you've got the other side with Alabama, which is Tua, who rightfully, in my opinion, should have been the Heisman Trophy winner this year, and I think he got screwed because he had an injury in the Georgia game, and late votes all came in for Murray. I'm not taking away from what Murray did. He was great, but I thought Tua was the best player in college football this year. Alabama's an absolute monster. I mean, the club, absolutely incredible football team. So it's a perfect matchup. Now, the betting action has been interesting in this game so far because, and we talked about this with Jason Simple on today's edition of the Las Vegas Sports Line. Had Alabama not given up some of their lead in the second half against Oklahoma, you're probably looking at a 6.5 open that maybe gets to 7. But the perception is such that Clemson just beat the crap out of Notre Dame, and Oklahoma got some points and got within the number against Alabama. And maybe that lowered the line a little bit to 6, and now we're seeing some 5.5 out there. So there is some Clemson money, and I don't know that it's sharp money, but what it is, as much as anything, is a similar to Super Bowl scenario as far as the betting is concerned. And here's why. in the Super Bowl, the point spread will actually be will often be a little lower than it should be, because the people who are betting the underdog are all doing so on the money line. It's a big public betting game, and the public doesn't know when they're getting robbed on the money line, which they are here. We're looking at what, plus 210?
Yeah.
Okay, you should be getting more than plus 210 if you want to buy Clemson money line, but it's not going to make a difference to the Rubes who are going to bet in force this weekend. So
190 because he had a 210, 190
right.
spread.
Yeah, right. Plus 190
on
a 5.5, 6-point dog. Okay, that's not phenomenal. So it's going to be bet like the Super Bowl in that the dog players are going to bet the money line, and the favorite players are going to take the point spread because, in essence, they're going to look like the sharp bettors. I got a little confused. The sharp bettors will play Alabama money line. If they're so disposed to play Alabama, you can now get Alabama, and you might get it minus 200. That's a bargain. I'm not saying which way I'm going in the game. I'm just telling you which. To me, if you're betting smart in this game, you don't bet Clemson money line. It's just not a good bet in terms of value. You bet Alabama money line, or you take the points with Clemson.
Ralph, I'm going to go to you. We talk about Trevor Lawrence and how amazing he has been in the fact that he's a true freshman. Back from your days at Phil Steele and with the publication, you guys looked at all of the recruits. Have you seen a recruit come in this year as a freshman? There's a lot of guys are talking that this is not only the best player this year, this might have been the best quarterback in the last 10 years out of high school football. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, and it's not just him. There's a lot of quarterbacks. Georgia had that situation. Tua taking over in the national championship. Even at Ohio State, you see these guys come in after sitting for 1 year, what they can do. There's just a progression of talent because of these kids are groomed at such a young age to become a college football quarterback. And then that translates to the NFL. We've never had a situation where 5 NFL rookies have played. So you have kids coming in, a freshmen that are now ready to play in college football. Those people put in a few years. Then you have people coming into the NFL that are now ready to play. So as we see in a lot of sports, AAU and basketball got it going where kids were ready to play in the NBA or not, like LeBron's days. Yeah. And now the same thing's happening in football where the camps are made, where the training and the regimen is started at such a young age that by the time they're ready to play college football and then the NFL, they're years ahead of where they were just 5 or 10 years ago in that same situation. So age doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Being a freshman, listen, Trevor Lawrence is not a freshman now. He's played 13 games. He's been through the ringers. His high school, he played everything he needed to do. The kid's so calm when you look at him. It's eerie how calm he is, even when he's under pressure. So I am not at all concerned saying Clemson has a true freshman quarterback playing in this game because at this point in the season, and it's the next year already, most of these kids are in early, so they've been in the school for a whole year. It's not the same situation as in the past.
Dave, I know you have a play in this game, so we're not going to ask you about it. You've had a great college football season, #1 at WagerTalk for the season in college football. So anybody wants to check out Dave's play, you do that at the site. I am going to go ahead and throw it to you, Ralph. Where are you looking at in this one?
I think that you actually, if you want Alabama, I think you're getting some value because of look what's happened lately. The Georgia game, they were behind. The game against Oklahoma, had they won 28-0, I think the line would have been higher. But since they didn't cover in that game, since they had a fight in the Georgia game, I think people think Clemson is a better team because of what they did, holding both Notre Dame and Pittsburgh to a season low in the ACC championship and the first round of the playoffs. But to me, you have two very similar defenses, the top 2 in the country. You have 2 similar offenses, both in the top 5 in the country. What people aren't talking about is Alabama does not have a good special teams unit, where Clemson's is not great, but it's certainly much better than Alabama. The dog has won the 4 straight title games. It's tough to win twice, so you have that chip on your shoulder. You know, we saw Clemson win it a couple years ago. What happened? Alabama had the chip on their shoulder last year, got the win. This year, now Clemson's the one with revenge playing in that situation. So when you have a revenge, a similar team, as good as defense, and you're getting the points, it all to me works out where I'm going to be a Tiger fan on Monday.
All right, I'm going to agree with you, and I'll tell you why in a moment. I'm going to ask Dave one quick question. We saw something New Year's Eve and New Year's Day that's actually opposite what the pattern had been for many, many, many years. Generally, you saw the favorites start to take hold when you got to the better bowl games. That was not the case this year. 9-2 for the 2 biggest days of the bowls, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
It was weird because in the early games this year, where a lot of times you see the dogs
it was the
do really well, the favorites all got there.
Yeah, so it's crazy. Do you think that we're going to have to, moving forward for bowls, this is something just to file for knowledge, we're going to have to relook how we do these bowls? Because I think...
Well, I won't, because I never have looked at that stuff. I don't care. I don't care about trends, and especially in bowls. I'm strictly matchups in bowls. So to me, it doesn't matter who's playing who or when.
The fact of that the only games that seem to matter is the games that are the championship games, that the other games have lost. Right.
Yeah.
All the other games have lost their meaning.
They're all exhibitions.
Right. And so it makes it a different handicap in that regard.
So here's what you want to look for. Because this is the trend, and this is a trend that does have some meaning to me. The teams, there's only, of all the teams that were bowl favorites this year that had multiple players who decided not to play, the only one that covered as a favorite was LSU.
By half.
Well,
they should have won by 40.
Yeah, I mean, I had LSU, and believe me, it's like, what the heck is going on here? Because they beat the crap out of Central Florida, and it was just some weird stuff that kept UCF within 1 score, as it turned out. But that was a big winning trend this year, and there's a rationale for it. If the most important players in the team, your best players are generally your team leaders.
Yes.
Okay? If the team leaders say this game doesn't matter, then how's the rest of the team going to say that it matters? Now, it's not as much of a factor as if it's an underdog, in my opinion, which we had one with Minnesota. They were an underdog that were missing multiple guys, including the linebacker, who was an outstanding player, who decided, well, we're not going to play. But it's different if you're in the underdog role because you've already got a little something to bank on there. And that whole game was weird because Georgia Tech did not come out inspired for Paul Johnson at all.
Oh, my God.
They were terribly flat. But that's something I will be looking at next year. And my guess is we're going to see more players passing on the minor bowls to get ready for the NFL because they don't want to gamble on getting hurt. And that could be a big factor in handicapping these games, at least for the immediate future as far as college bowls are concerned.
You know, as far as early bowls, dogs, and later favorite, we saw some weird lines this year, which we haven't in the past. Fresno State being a favorite in the Las Vegas Bowl against the Pac-12 teams. Yeah. Right, but I'm just saying that has never happened in the past. And it's just clearly it's motivation. Just because a team, you need a bubble burst to not be motivated, i.e. Michigan, I was on Florida, i.e. Georgia, I was on Texas, because those people had national championship aspirations burst. And Marco,
they had players missing too.
And right. And Marco, you talk about bubble burst. And now on the opposite side, you have teams that have been poor that were making the transition up, i.e. Texas, i.e. Florida. Some teams, though, again, each situation is different because of motivation. Right. At A&M, you had Jimbo Fisher trying to get his team up to the SEC level where he's going to compete with Alabama. Look what they did.
Well, and here's one other thing coming out of that game. That was the opposite as far as the players missing are concerned, because the A&M players, none of them said, and they actually made a big deal about it. If you read the stuff, the pregame stuff, they actually made a point of saying, nobody here is sitting out. We want to all play this game, and the seniors all want to go out on a big winning note. And, well, you saw what happened.
They talked about setting the next precedent for A&M under a new head coach. So, again, you can't generalize because teams that had losing years that are excited to be there are great. LSU is another example where every other situation where you played the group of 5 team, You had a bubble burst before.
Yep.
Auburn lost to Alabama when they lost to UCF.
Even with some of the lesser games.
Right.
Middle
But
Tennessee. I mean,
LSU was excited to be at a New Year's Six bowl with a 3-loss record, which they thought they also should have beaten A&M the week before.
well,
So
that's why every game has to be looked
Again,
at. Listen, Orgeron, you can say what you want about his in-game coaching at times, which is baffling. But he is gets pretty good. But he's a great motivator.
Yeah.
He's a really great motivator.
Well, you don't know what the hell he's saying.
it's the water.
Well, whatever
boy.
it is, they understand him down in Bayou country, and those kids came out and played really hard in that game.
All right,
So
guys.
again, each situation's different, but really, motivation, you look at each game. Do you have a clear-cut motivated team against the not? That should be your bowl plays to start with.
I agree with the Clemson side. I'm going to go old school. Clemson, to me, has the better defense. I love the way they've played this year. Only one team scored over 24 points against them all year. That was South Carolina game. I still can't. South Carolina put up some big numbers in that game.
South Carolina put up 500. A&M put up 500
South Carolina was a weird team because there were times when they really looked like a good team, and then Bentley would do something really bad, and they didn't.
And that is a rivalry game. South Carolina, Clemson is a rivalry.
South Carolina's. You can argue South Carolina underachieved. They were a team that were on the radar for a lot of people going into this season as a dark horse to pull the upset in the SEC. It just never came together.
Right. All right, guys. So you got 2 votes for Clemson, and Dave actually
One
has
abstaining, but a strong 4% play on the site.
You do.
And
Check
I'll mention, by the way, what the hell? I'll do a little brag fest here.
Go ahead.
The NHL. I mean, it's not 22-2 Carmine Bianco.
Yeah, I was going to say
But
Carmine's
it's
on top of the hill there.
24-7 right now. So the NHL's been great. 9-2 right now in college basketball. I'm not doing the NBA, so I'm 0-0 there.
undefeated.
And winless as well. But it's been really good it's not just for me, but for any of the handicappers, because a lot of guys, Ralph has just been insane in football down the stretch. It's just an incredible run. There's a special offer right now where you can get the selections, and I hope I'm doing this right because I'm not the one who puts this together. It's Johnny Detroit and Perez and those guys. But you can get all access for a full year, 365-day year, for all the selections at a really greatly reduced price. It's available right now. So not just me, any of the handicappers there. It's a good deal.
And a little bit later in the show, we're going to be talking about a special deal on 3 of us. I'll be talking about that for this week if you want a shorter-term package. Listening to the podcast pays off, so we're going to have that deal up a little bit later. And last night, just shout out to Carmine when we were having dinner
At Joe's.
At Joe's
You
here in
didn't invite
Vegas.
me, you rotten son of a...
Whenever I met his wife for the first time. Super nice meeting her. And whenever we met, first thing I said to him, because he had won his game again in hockey last night, I said 22-2.
Overtime.
Yeah, overtime.
Yeah.
You got it done again. 22-2. That's great. But then I go to him, but it ain't 25-0. Just remember that. And his wife starts laughing because Carmine told him, I want to see how long before he mentions it ain't 25-0. And it was in the introductions.
I will say this, 20-1 football run. And, Marco, I am 12-0 in college football, so my streak will be carrying over to next year, so you better worry all summer long about...
so you don't have an official play on Monday night?
I do. I will not have an official play on
so
it.
You want to keep that 12-0
I am
next
12-0. You got to worry all summer that I'll be starting next year to catch your record.
Yeah, okay. All right. Just to throw out there, I mean, with all these records you guys have had, and you've been incredible run with the football for you too. I started the bowl games 0-3. I finished the bowl games 9-3.
Nice.
The NFL, I'm on a 10-2 run the last 3 weeks in the NFL. I only had 2 plays last week. I hate week 17. Total disclosure, I hate it. I went 1-1, and I was happy as a lark to go 1-1.
Because I went 0-2, and my hot streak cooled off in the NFL. And by the way,
it's such a hard week, Dave.
This is why and I'm doing it this weekend. We'll be getting into the NFL in a moment. I'll save it. I'll save my little speech about my own NFL handicapping for this next portion of the show.
I will mention one thing: 20-1 football, 21-1 football run, 9-1 in the NFL. My loss was the only 5% play I had on there on the Chargers against Baltimore.
Oh, you
because
suck.
So, when we talk about these records, guys, a lot of people cherry pick the one game.
Yeah.
Well, if you were with me for a period of time, you'd be 9-1. A lot of you just probably bought that one game, and you're 0-1 with my plays in the NFL with that 5% loser. So again, there's good handicappers here that put out a lot of work. Some of you guys like picking just those top-rated plays, but these all-access plays really are the way to go when you have a guy that's doing it.
There were five handicappers this year at WagerTalk who, if you played the percentages, you more than doubled your bankroll over the course of 2018. I was fortunate to be one of those.
As was I.
Okay, you can't win 100% plus of your bankroll playing everything on one play. You can't do it.
You guys have been, we joke we're the three old guys of the site. We joke all the time. But the thing that just really baffles me, as long as I've been in this industry, and, going back when I had that 25-game winning streak, during that streak, the other place that I was at, we won't even mention that place, but their top rating was a triple play.
Right.
Okay? I only had like 3 triple plays during that whole 25-0 run. And it just blew my mind that on a daily basis, if I had the triple play, how many sales I had.
Oh, I know.
And in the middle of a 25-0 run, how that would drop off if somebody else on the site had a triple play that might only have been hitting 50% for the season. Or less, but they had a big play. And it just blows my mind, the mentality of the average gambler.
Which is why, from a marketing standpoint, we're kind of stupid at WagerTalk because we don't allow games of the year.
Yeah, where that other site has it. Yeah,
from a
they
dollar
have
standpoint,
it every single day. They have a max play.
Right. Well, the fact is that we, as a whole, as an entire entity, we cost ourselves money by not having games of the year. But
we're doing it the right way, guys.
It's the right way to do it. There's no such thing as a game of the year.
Yeah. All right. That's enough. We're going to get off our high horse right now. We got the message across. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got 4 NFL wildcard games. And, guys, I think this is the best round of 4 that we might have had in the last few years. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. This is the part of the season we wait for. NFL playoffs, wild card round. I love the wild card round because you get some really intriguing matchups. Because a lot of times, and we actually have a couple examples this year where you've got a better record on the wild card team than the team that's actually won the division.
Look, arguably, it's the best, in terms of balance, it's the best 12-team field we've ever seen. And that's only in terms of balance. I'm not saying that they're better teams, because there are no. I don't think there's a single team that is okay. Well, they're going to be in the Super Bowl. You can make a case personally. I think the weakest team in the entire field, personally, just my opinion, is Dallas. Okay, I think they're the least likely to get to the Super Bowl. You can still make a decent case for why Dallas can get to the Super Bowl. So it's a different type of playoff than we've maybe ever seen, because you got 12 teams that are all live.
You do. Ralph, you will start with the first one. We've got Indianapolis heading in to play Houston. Nobody wants to play the Colts right now. This is a team that's playing some good football.
Well, Houston's just as hot, but people don't say Houston's 11-2 down the stretch.
No, they talk about Andrew Luck, because Deshaun Watson hasn't got the name yet. I think this could be his coming out party this playoffs in merge, and especially if he beats Andrew Luck here. They played twice. Both of them were close games. The only loss that was the first loss in 9 games for Houston whenever Indianapolis went in there. But Indianapolis went in there basically life or death. Indianapolis has been playing a playoff game for the last month to get in. They had no margin for error, and they played well. And Andrew Luck coming into this year, Dave, we didn't know what to expect.
No, and early on, he couldn't throw the ball more than 30 yards early on. It's like, what's going on here now? Wow.
Yeah. Ralph, we've seen some line movement. We've seen a lot of line movement on these playoff games this week. Looking at this one, do you buy the line movement, the money going to the Colts? They are the more attractive team. And as you said, Houston's done nothing wrong, but everybody loves the Colts.
Well, I lean with the Colts here, and it's because I like looking at what teams have done against winning teams on the season. I go back and look at them, and Houston's 3-4 ATS against winning teams, plus 14 yards per game. The Colts are 5-2 ATS against winning teams, plus 57 yards per game, so significant edge. We talked about Andrew Luck. If you mention Andrew Luck, you got to mention the O-line. 18 sacks is the best in the NFL, but what's even more impressive, when Andrew Luck was first playing, and Dave, you said he couldn't throw down, he gave up 9 sacks the first 4 games. That means the last 12 games, they've only allowed 9 sacks. Well, when they played Houston, they had 5 sacks on Deshaun Watson in that one game. That shows the disparity on the line. So, those numbers have me leaning the Colts. And also, while Houston has won down the stretch, they have gone 9-2. They have been outgained in 4 of their last 5 games.
Harkening back to Luck, and the difference now between early in the season. Remember, there was a game earlier this year where the Colts had to try a Hail Mary in the last play of the game and actually took Luck out of the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And put Brissett in because Luck couldn't throw the ball down the field that far. It's changed.
Right.
He's back to Andrew Luck. Watson's playing great. I mean, he's such a weapon for the Texans. I won't have a play on this game, and what I wanted to mention was that I've done really well sticking with my NFL projections where I get value on the numbers I make for the game as opposed to what the line is. I deviated from that on one game last Sunday.
Yeah.
I took the Packers minus the points against the Lions.
Yeah.
If the Lions had taken all their guys off the field on defense, Deshaun Kaiser still couldn't have scored. And that's not an excuse because the Packers were losing before Rodgers went out.
I'm laughing because Dave actually put that in his write-up when he sent out his play. I'm deviating from my system on this one game.
My opinion isn't worth shit. Okay, but my numbers are really good. My numbers on this game say the line is right where it's supposed to be, so I got nothing.
All right, I'm going to look at the under in this one, and we saw an upward tick on this game to go to 49. This is a playoff game, and as good as Indianapolis has played this year, what has impressed me even more is I'm surprised at the level their defense has played this year. This defense has improved dramatically from last year.
Marco, I had them 32 out of 32 on defense coming into the season. Can you get it more wrong than that?
Yeah, I got to agree with you. You can't. This is a team, they're number 10 in points allowed, 21.5 points per game, number 13 in yards per play at 5.7. I think we're going to see a tighter game in this one. There were some big plays in both of those first 2 meetings, some couple quick scores that kind of changed the tempo of the game a little bit. I think first playoff game for Frank Reich. Bill O'Brien doesn't have a lot of experience in the playoffs either.
He's got some going back to his New England days.
Yeah, it's his New England days. But I think you're going to see this a little closer to the vest. I'm going under the 49. And this might be one of those games, too. Watch in-game because the totals are going to fluctuate pretty quickly in the game. If you get that situation where if you take the 49 early and they do get that first quarter where they're filling each other out, you might see a nice adjustment in game where if you want to come back and take a little bit on the over and set yourself up for a nice middle, that's a possibility.
Marco, you and I in Handicappers Corner a few weeks ago did NFL in the second meetings. And in those second meetings, no matter what happened in the first meeting, it was a 47% play to the over, 53% to the under, and now you're having a third meeting in this instance, which again would lend to that thought.
And it's a playoff game, which means you don't want to.
You're much more conservative.
Yeah, the attitude being we can't afford to make a mistake.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, talking about 2 teams that got down the stretch, Dallas had theirs locked up only because everybody basically died in the NFC East.
To some extent.
The Giants were never a factor. Washington was decimated by injuries.
But nevertheless, you got 2 teams from that division that made it to the playoffs, so it ain't that bad.
Yeah. I still think it's a little bit weaker, but Seattle, what a job Pete Carroll's done this year, guys.
Well, yes, because if you go back to the preseason projections, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 6.5 was the over and under win prop on Seattle. The window was closed. Now, part of that was the fact that the 49ers were looked upon as being a likely contender, at least for the playoffs this year, before they lost
Fool's gold. Even though Garoppolo got hurt.
They had more injuries. coming out of the preseason than almost any team I can remember. I mean, they just got destroyed with injuries in the preseason. So that had contributed to Seattle being looked upon as a non-entity this season. But the general consensus was Legion of Boom is done. Not there anymore. The offense outside of Russell Wilson and Lockett doesn't offer much. Well, it turned out it did. They established a really good running game.
Number one in the NFL.
Fantastic. And Wilson, I don't know why he gets the hate he gets from some people. This guy is a terrific quarterback.
Because he doesn't have those 400-yard passing games. He does what he needs to do to win the game.
He makes big plays, too. And then on the Dallas side, let's call it straight. Since Amari Cooper got acquired, they've been a completely different football team. That trade transformed this roster. And what the Cowboys were doing prior to Cooper is you can throw it out now. And since Cooper's arrived, they've been a good football team.
Absolutely. Ralph, not that often do you see one player change the whole complexion of a football team. But Amari Cooper has done that. What he's done is now they have a deep threat. Okay, Dak Prescott had nobody to throw to this year, so they have a presence. Now he's getting the double teams, which opens up the other guys like Beasley and so forth. Beasley was making plays when he wasn't there.
Ezekiel Elliott has over 50 receptions this year. Yeah. I mean, they're just the offense can do so many different things now with Cooper stretching the defense.
And Prescott is playing at a much closer level to where he was as a rookie.
Yes.
Than at any time subsequently where he had kind of gone backwards.
And the residue of this actually affected the defense as well because the offense was staying on the field now. Yep. When the offense is on the field for more plays, what's that mean? The defense is on the field for less plays.
Plus, Dallas discovered another superstar on defense, Van Der Esch.
Yes.
This kid, I mean, look.
Yeah, it used to be when Sean Lee was out, they were done.
Yeah.
And now,
better than Sean Lee.
Sean Lee was sitting on the bench because he was playing, and Sean Lee was able to play, but they had him in because of Sean Lee. I mean, last year, if Sean Lee was out, I played against the Cowboys, period. So it shows what the kid from Boise really has done.
Seattle's getting a lot of love because a lot of people don't believe in Dallas. For me, I think that's a little bit of a mistake in this game. This is the one where, of the three small home favorites, I think Dallas is getting the least amount of attention.
Right. Well, but the flip side of that is that a lot of people are going to look at this and say, well, I've got the combination of Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, and I prefer that to the combination of Jason Garrett and Dak Prescott. And it's kind of tough to argue against that. I mean, that is a plus for the Seahawks.
Absolutely, 100%. I think this is the game that can get Dak Prescott back to that level that you talked about in the rookie season. It's going to be a good game for teaser people. Obviously, this is the perfect teaser for Seattle because you have a low over-under. Yeah. And you got a team getting 1.5 points. You use the 6-point teaser. You get it through all of the key numbers of the 3, 4, 6, and 7. This is old school teaser 101. And we actually
Seattle and the Chargers, I think, will be the biggest teaser we've seen
from the Sharps. Yeah. A lot of people. It amazes me, Dave, and this is why it drives me crazy, but this is why people lose. A lot of people look and they want to take that small favorite and make them an underdog. I got a favorite to make them. You're losing value. But they don't see it, Dave.
They can't land in a tie.
Yeah, they don't see it, Dave. It just it
so
drives
you have
me
a
nuts.
5-point teaser, so you're losing 20% of your value.
Yeah.
Losing a point. I look at Seattle, and when the matchups came up, I said I circled Seattle, and I said I like them. But looking at them a little closer, I think a lot of people are fading Dallas because Jason Garrett is 16-32 against the spread as a home favorite. Dallas is 3-8 against the spread in the playoffs. But when I look at Seattle, they are number 19 in yards per game diff. So you're a below 500 team compared to the rest of the league.
Played a lot easier schedule.
And they're plus 15 turnovers.
One of the easiest in the NFL.
They're number one in turnover margin, so they got a lot of their advantages because of the turnover. And then I look at Seattle's defense. I still think I would lean with Seattle, but they're number 30th in yards per play allowed, 5.9 yards per play. They're number 30th, allowing 4.95 yards per carry against a very...
But that brings into the argument. Much more efficient. Yes. Because you get into the red zone and now...
good red zone defense,
your yards just came to an end.
So, it's a situation where I thought I liked Seattle more than I did. When I looked at it, I would lean with Seattle, but it'll just keep me away from the game.
Final note I'll give on there, and you touched upon one thing there. Seattle's bread and butter has been the running game.
Right.
160 yards per game
and
on
they have
the
to
ground.
establish that to really free up Wilson to do what he needs to do.
The only problem is they're going against the number 4 ranked defense against the run.
Yeah, and that's a legit defense against the run.
And that's where I'll rest my case, and I'm on the Dallas side. All right, guys, let's move to Sunday. This is the one that I think is going to be the fun game. And I'm going to be honest with you. I really do believe the winner of this game might end up having the best. If you want to look for a value team to get to the Super Bowl, I think whoever comes out of this game is that value team because the bigger names are out there for the next round. The Patriots, the Kansas City.
So you're talking about the Chargers game, obviously.
Obviously, talking Chargers, Baltimore.
Right.
Dave, I'll start with you. We've beat this to death. We keep saying, Baltimore, they're doing this unconventional, but they're getting it done. At some point, it's got to stop.
Well,
we thought it would happen
maybe
in the first meeting between these two because they were going to finally face a decent defense where we thought Lamar Jackson wouldn't be able to do the things that he's been doing with his feet. And they got the win. A very key play in that game, the pick six, opened the game back up for Baltimore and gave them breathing room where the Chargers had a chance driving to change the complexion of that game. Can they do it again? Does Cinderella's story end for Lamar Jackson?
Well, it's the second look the Chargers have had against the spread option.
Which would be the first time Lamar's faced the team for the second time.
I wish we had some kind of a track record to show what teams that have seen it previously are able to do, but we don't, so it's a guess. Here's what I do like that aspect for the Chargers. I think the fact that they've seen it before gives them something to practice against. They know what's coming. The downside is this. The Chargers never win big games. They just don't. They find a way not to win the big game. And that really worries me.
Is that the old Chargers? I mean, you went to Seattle, you won. You went to Kansas City, you won.
Yeah, but this is the playoffs. And by the way,
Rivers is 5-1 as a playoff dog.
They still had the chance to win the division and to get the number 1 seed, and they found they just could not get that win. I just maybe trust Baltimore a little more here, but I know on paper the Chargers are a better team than Baltimore. They've got more balance. I don't think the difference on defense is dramatic. I think the Ravens have a better defense, but I think it's pretty close. But boy, I mean, I just have a feeling this could be another one of those games where you look at it, and here it is, and the Chargers, you're going to look at the numbers at the end of the game and say, boy, the Chargers outplayed them. And then you look at the final score, and they find a way to lose it. I think it's real close. I mean, this looks like a one-possession game to me.
You got to give Harbaugh a big edge over Anthony Lynn. I got to tell you one thing.
He's been there before.
Anthony Lynn, if he does not have a game plan that includes one guy that is going to be a spy on every single play,
got to be
mirroring Lamar Jackson, he's an idiot.
And the other thing is, at what point in the game, is it the first, second, third, or fourth quarter, the Chargers screw up something on special teams, and the Ravens take advantage?
Well, there's no question.
Tucker,
Kicking game. There's no comparison there.
He had that miss a couple of weeks ago, which was like, what the hell happened? He missed 2 field goals in the same game. That was corrected in a hurry. And Baltimore requires a shorter field than the Chargers. And in this type of game, that could be critical. It could mean 3-point possessions for the Ravens that the Chargers can't match.
Well, the Ravens' defense has been so good this year that Baltimore is number 1 in the NFL in yards per game diff. So take every offense, every defense, put them together. The Ravens are plus 82 yards per game. They're almost 20 yards better than everyone else in the league. So, that's how good they are. With that being said, it comes down to one stat for me. And, Dave, you hit it. You mentioned it. Baltimore had a 361-193-yard edge at the Chargers. So it wasn't close. I mean, It was 107. They almost doubled their yardage. So hats off to them beating me. As I mentioned, that was my only loss going down the stretch. But who will benefit more the second time? I think Phillip Rivers will benefit and get better against the Baltimore defense, and I think the Chargers defense will benefit and get better against Lamar Jackson the second time. So both of those edges, to me, go towards the Chargers in my mind, and that's why I like the LA Chargers.
And one other thing, my last comment of the game, as good as Justin Tucker is, the downside of that is the Ravens maybe have too much of a reliance on him. Their red zone offense last week against Cleveland,
horrible.
They should have won the game by 40. Okay, they had the Browns buried in that football game. Should have been 27-7, and then you had that goofy play with Jackson and turned the whole game around. They got to avoid that mistake or those mistakes in the red zone because you make them again. Not knocking Cleveland, but they're still the Browns are a work in progress. The Chargers have already arrived. You make those mistakes against the Chargers, you're going out of it with a loss.
Last thing I'll say, and Dave, you've joked many times and said the Chargers play on the road every week,
well,
whether they're home or away. But their true road games this year, they're 7-1 against the spread. This is a team that, playing those home games with everybody rooting for the other team might have made you a better team.
Well, plus not for nothing, but most of the team was commuting anyway.
Yeah.
Even for the home games. Most of them still live in San Diego. Yeah.
I agree. I'm on San Diego. All right, let's move to the last one.
You're on the Chargers.
I'm on the Chargers. Hey, I almost made it. I almost got out without calling them San Diego. You threw me off by saying they were living in San Diego.
I knew I could get you into that.
You baited me into that
I
one.
did. First one of
Nice assist there right in front of the net.
No problem,
And
buddy.
I put it in the wrong one. All right, Philadelphia, Chicago. Dave, Philadelphia, St. Nick to the rescue.
Oh,
again.
man.
But let's be realistic. They went 5-1 down the stretch. 3 of their 5 wins. I'm just going to make this as simple as I can make it. One was the Giants, who's horrible. 2 of the wins were against Washington that was absolutely decimated down the stretch. So 3 of their 5 wins are tainted.
I know. But here's the flip side of it. This goofy team doesn't think they can lose with Nick Foles in the field.
But this is the same team. Do you remember at the beginning of the season? We got to hurry up and get Wentz back.
Yeah. But now the games matter, and Foles there's just an intangible there, some kind of dynamic that really works for the Eagles with Foles. I actually think that it makes no sense because Wentz is clearly a more talented guy than Nick Foles at every aspect of the game. But they play better with Foles. It's just the way it is. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Dave and I talked about this on the radio, and I'm going to go back to when Foles played that first game at the Rams, and pregame, the announcers were talking how the locker room was actually upbeat that it was Foles in there, how much confidence they have with Foles that they can win this game, and what do they do? They go out and play him. So I don't care about who you have to play. And while you say, oh, they played Washington twice and the Giants, those are division foes that want to beat you and keep you out of the playoffs. So that's not like saying you're playing a non-conference game against the weakest foe, Arizona or Oakland. You are playing a division foe that wants to beat you. So I give them a little more credence in beating those teams, even though you said they are bad teams, and I understand that. But to me, the thing that concerns me is this. I don't have much on this game, and I'm still a toss-up. But Philly has gotten outgained by 63 yards per game on the road. That's the worst of all the playoff teams, and that's a concern for me going against this Bears defense and with the noise they're going to bring and how excited it's going to be in Soldier Field.
On paper, the Bears win the game. They're better than the Eagles, okay? Considerably better on defense, and I think the offenses are close. But that intangible variable. Yeah. And the fact that it's the Eagles, defending champions, getting a little extra motivation out of the fact that they're going to look at this. They're going to look at the line in this game.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, we're the Super Bowl champs with 6-point dogs against a team that hasn't been in the playoffs for years. I think, it's almost like a bowl game from that standpoint. I actually think the motivational edge might be on the Eagles' side here, and that worries me. I'm not going to play the game. My numbers say Chicago. My opinion says Philadelphia. For what it's worth, my numbers are way better than my opinion, so I'm going to pass.
All right, I lean to Chicago. The only asterisk I have, and excuse the pun, I'll steal it from Kelly. She used it in the video. The wild card in this game is Mitch Trubisky. This is his first playoff game, and I don't care how good somebody is or if played that year, until you do something that you've never done before, there's no way to know how you're going to react. This defense is good enough to carry a mediocre performance, but if he really, has a bad game, throws a pick six or something, those are hard to come back from. So that's the intangible in this one, but I lean to Chicago. All right, guys, we're going to step out. When we come back, it's best bet time. That is up next here on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. Before we jump into those best bets, let me tell you what's happening at WagerTalk. Hey, we appreciate you tuning in and listening to our podcast each week. Dave, Ralph, and myself, and we're going to give you a special offer. This week only, if you use coupon code PD50, that's PD50, you're going to get 50% off a 3-day or 7-day all-access package from Ralph, Dave, or myself. Pick your favorite capper, or better yet, get the three-headed monster and get all three of us, all of our plays, 50% off 3-day or 7-day package this week. All right, Dave, we're going to go to an advanced basketball game for you, and this is really advanced because this is coming up on January 8th, so you got about 5 days. We're taping on a Thursday, but you got a situation you like coming up in college hoops.
I got this game circled, NC State, North Carolina. Rivalry matchup. I don't think North Carolina is where they want to be yet. I think NC State is. The advanced metrics for NC State are actually really, really good. They are an underrated basketball team right now, and I think you're going to get some value with NC State in their matchup against North Carolina on the 8th. So you got to wait for the game to show up. But when NC State and North Carolina does show up next week, NC State's the side I like.
And you're going to have NC State off a couple extra days rest. NC State plays Thursday. Right. They don't play Saturday. North Carolina's going to have a Saturday game. So
good stuff from Dave. We'll go to you, Ralph. You got a college hoop play for us.
Well, Marco, we're recording Thursday, and as of today, there's only 2 teams that haven't played a true road game in college basketball. Duke plays their first game, Wake Forest, I think January 18th. West Virginia is the other. Their first true road game is this Saturday, and I'm going to fade them as my best bet. Their guard play has been atrocious this year. They're 8-5 or 8-6, and we're getting some value because they actually covered against Texas Tech on Wednesday night. Again, making this first road game to a top 10 defense like Texas with the Longhorns. Longhorns are going to put a stranglehold on this West Virginia team, and the Longhorns are my best bet Saturday college basketball.
All right, I'm going to go to the NFL. I'm going to go to the Sunday game. I'm going to take those L.A. Chargers. Screw you, Dave. The L.A. Chargers plus the small number here. I'll also be using them on teasers, guys. I'll be totally honest. This is a perfect game to tease. But I think the big factor here is the second meeting. This will be the first time somebody has faced Lamar Jackson for the second time, and I'm going to go ahead and go with the Chargers. You heard all my reasons in that previous section. We're going to wrap things up. I want to thank all of our guests tonight. William Bernanke joining us from CG Analytics. My partners in crime here in the studio, Dave Cokin, Ralph Michaels. We've got Mark Seidel behind the controls. And, of course, Johnny Detroit in Detroit. He gets this podcast up to all of the media outlets. You can listen to us on Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio. Subscribe to iTunes. And, of course, got to thank you guys, the listeners. If you don't tune in, we're not doing this podcast. It's for you guys, and we appreciate it. I'm Marco D'Angelo. We'll be back next week. Until then, let's cash some tickets.